Okay, here we are in the last segment of the digestive system. We just saw digestion, the function of the oral cavity, the esophagus, the stomach. The oral cavity, we digested carbohydrates with salivary amylase, very insignificant digestion of fats in the mouth. We went into the stomach where we digested primarily proteins with the help of the enzyme pepsin, very insignificant digestion of fats, right? And then we went into the first segment of the small intestines called the duodenum, and that's where we completed the digestion of carbohydrates and protein, and then we also started and completed the digestion of fats, right? But we needed the help of our pancreas with the secretions from the pancreas and also the secretions from the liver. We also saw how the nerves and hormones help to control that sequence of events. So we have to stimulate digestion in the stomach and then inhibit it and so on and so forth. Stimulate secretions from the pancreas and the liver, right? So that we can get everything happening in a series. Okay, so now we've digested the food and we're heading into the next segments of the small intestines, the jejunum and the ileum, right? And so in the mucosal layer, the epithelial layer, the mucosal layer, becomes even more folded, okay? Folded into what are called villi. And what that does is that increases the surface area, that absorptive area. So again, all of that food now is going to come through. It's broken down. It's all in fluids, and all these nutrients are broken down into mainly single molecules. So we need to mix that up in here so that it touches the surface, the mucosal layer, so that it can be brought across. So here's a close-up of that, each villi. So this is the folding of the small intestines itself into plicae, but then the mucosal layer folds into villi, and then even remember the folding of the cell membrane of each individual cell too. Completely increases the cell membrane, or increases the surface where exchange can take place. So you see in each villus, there's a capillary, right? So now things can diffuse or move across the simple columnar cells into the capillary. And then there's also a lacteal. Remember, that is a structure branching off from a lymphatic vessel, and that is important in absorbing fats as well. So the jejunum absorbs almost everything presented to it in the form of nutrients, and then the ileum absorbs almost all the water and the vitamins that occur there, right? And that's because of all of this folding increasing the surface area. So again, we need to get the fluid containing the nutrients and electrolytes and things touching the surface so that the movement of the nutrients can move across those cells. So we do that through a method of motility called segmentation. So instead of the successive contraction of smooth muscle to push things through in a direction like peristalsis, in the small intestine, it's primarily what's called segmentation. So it just kind of almost randomly contracts in different areas, just kind of putting pressure on the fluid inside so it really churns it up and gets it all mixed up and touching the luminal surface, right? So we call it chyme, but it isn't acid chyme anymore. And again, there's pacemaker cells within the small intestine, which produce what's called a basic electrical rhythm, BER. And again, it's just to get this motility. I keep doing that, don't mean to do that. Just to get this moving. When you're not eating, when you're done eating, you're finished with your meal, you'll also get this what's called a migrating motility complex. And it starts up at the stomach, and it's just a sequence of this one peristaltic wave of contraction, just kind of moving through the stomach and then through the entire small intestines. And basically it's just there to sweep everything clean. And so sometimes that migrating motility complex, when it sweeps through, there's air filled in there because you haven't eaten in a while, and you hear that as growling. And that's a signal to you. You go, oh, I haven't eaten in a while. I probably should eat. I think I'm hungry. My stomach's growling, right? But it's really just to kind of sweep it through. So segmentation is to mix it up and get the absorption occurring. So in the jejunum, it'll absorb the nutrients. And in the ileum, it's specialized to absorb much of the water and the vitamins that are in there. All right, and so remember, all these secretions included water. So we bring the water back into our body instead of losing it. Okay, so from there, once it leaves the ileum, which is right here, there's another sphincter, okay, called the ileocecal valve. And anything left that didn't get absorbed now enters the large intestines. And the large intestine is not an absorptive surface. It mainly kind of dries the substances in here and is a storage organ for the waste product, right? So now we have foods that were indigestible, some of the bile and things that we can't reabsorb, we get rid of that, and any remaining fluid, right? And so the whole structure is called the large intestine, but it's separated into segments called the colon, right? So on the right side of your body, yeah, I gotta think of my right and left, is the ascending colon, and that means the material moves upward. And then it crosses across to the left side of your body, so that's transverse colon. And then it goes down the left side of your body, right? So the material moves downward through the descending colon. And then it hits this curve called the sigmoid colon, okay? And so basically, again, it's just extracting more water. So it does absorb. It's extracting more water and salt, but mainly to dry and then compact the waste material in there. We do also have bacteria, which can help process some of what would normally be waste for us into vitamins and things. So we do have a population of bacteria that's important to us in here as well. Okay, so what helps it move is these pouches. These pouches are called haustra. And so that helps to kind of form the waste into little segments, right, that get pushed through. And you can see that the longitudinal muscle has been reduced into that muscle called the tinea coli. I think I had that there, yeah. So that's a band of muscle, but it's mainly the haustra which form these sacs, which contract and help to really kind of compact the waste and then move it through, right? Don't forget the ileocecal valve. I should probably have that at the top here. Just controlling the material from the ileum into the large intestines. And the large intestine starts with a pouch down here called the cecum. All right, and then here you have an appendix that branches off that, and it's a lymphoid organ. It used to really function, it does in other animals, as a immunity function. In the humans, it's become so reduced that it's not super functional anymore, and so that can easily get infected. Something gets lodged in there, and that can get infected, and that's where you have to get your appendix removed. But we can live just fine without it. Right, so once everything kind of moves through and through the sigmoid colon, then it will get stored in the almost last segment of the digestive system, and that's the rectum, right? And the rectum stores the waste, which is in the form of the feces, and is controlled, its release is controlled by the anus. The anus has two sphincters, right? So how does it know to open, to release the contents in there? Well, we have stretch receptors within the rectum, right? And so as the rectum starts to fill up and begins to stretch, those stretch receptors cause a reflex, right? And one, it will trigger the internal anal sphincter to relax, and that will start to open the anus. Okay, and you don't have control over that. That's the simple reflex you don't have control over. That's when you go, I have to go to the bathroom, right? But you feel that pressure. But luckily, because that's smooth muscle in the internal sphincter, luckily in the external sphincter, you have skeletal muscles. So when you go, I have to go to the bathroom, you have conscious control over the external sphincter, which is over here, I guess. Okay, you have control over the external sphincter. Okay, and so you hopefully then can keep that closed until you get to the appropriate area to release the contents. Right? And these external sphincters, they don't fully develop until about age 2. That's why it's difficult to potty train a child before age 2, because they don't have control over the sphincters yet. And we have a same setup around our urethra as well. So some kids maybe develop a little bit faster than age 2, but parents who try to, look, I'm sick of diapers, I'm just going to train my kid, if those sphincters aren't fully developed yet, you're just going to frustrate your kid. So it's biology. You have to wait. All righty. 1 second, please. I got to finish up here. One last slide to kind of bring this all together. So this is just kind of summarizing the pathways to control the digestive system and your activities. So we went over the intrinsic nerve system, the extrinsic autonomic, and the hormones, right? And what these are going to do, you've got these receptors that are determining the chemicals, the pressure, right? The tonicity, right? The osmolarity, I should say, of the luminal contents. And then all of that is controlling, sending signals to these different ways to control the smooth muscle and the glands and the hormonal control. All righty, so that's it. It's a big system, so it was a big lecture. Hope you guys enjoyed it. All righty.